Okay, guys, welcome back. We are in chapter 43. This is video 2. They are outside Camp Green Lake. They can hear the camp members and the counselors, especially Mr. Sir. So, Zero, or Hector, was correct when he told Stanley, we're going the wrong way. We need to go the other way. He was absolutely correct. Very, very bright. Okay. They approached a cluster of holes. Let's wait here until they go in, said Zero. Stanley nodded. He checked to make sure there was nothing living in it, then climbed down into a hole. Zero climbed into the one next to him. Despite having gone the wrong way for a while, it hadn't taken them nearly as long as Stanley had expected. Now, they just had to wait. The sun cut through the cloud, and Stanley felt its rays beating down on him. But soon more clouds filled the sky, shading Stanley and his hole. He waited until he was certain the last of the campers had finished for the day. Then he waited a little longer. As quietly as possible, he and Zero climbed up out of their holes and crept toward camp. Stanley held the sack in front of him, cradled in his arms, instead of over his shoulder, to keep the jars from clanking against each other. A wave of terror rushed over him when he saw the compound, the tents, the rec room, the warden's cabin under the 2 oak trees. The fear made him dizzy. He took a breath, summoned his courage, and continued. That's the one, he whispered, pointing out to the hole he had found, where he had found the gold tube. It was still about 50 yards away, but Stanley was pretty sure it was the right hole. There was no need to risk going any closer. They climbed down into adjacent holes and waited for the camp to fall asleep. I want to bring something to your attention that we see going on in this story. Louis Sachar uses a technique in here where it's called symbolism. And symbolism means that there's an action or there's an object that actually symbolizes, means something else. So in this story, we keep seeing this sentence, especially now, since the boys have found the onions and are eating the onions and are getting to know each other, we see this: Stanley peeled an onion. Now, if you know anything about onions, onions have multiple layers. Okay? An onion is full of, let me find a piece of paper. Okay, so if you ever peel a large onion from your garden or that you buy at the store, an onion grows in layers like this. So when you peel an onion, if you peel back the skin, you peel one layer off, and then you can peel the next layer off and the next layer off. I think Louis Sachar uses this symbolism of Stanley peeled an onion to represent every time Stanley learns a little bit more about Zero, about Hector's life. What has happened to Hector to lead him to be at Camp Green Lake. He learns a little bit more. He peels back that onion, okay? Like that onion, Hector kept himself protected, right? He didn't say anything, kept his skin on, right? Just like an onion. But once you peel back those layers, you can see what an interesting person Hector is. And you can see the terrible luck that Hector has had in his life that has led to him being in Camp Green Lake. So remember way back when Mr. Pendansky was saying, you're all here because of your own choices. It's up to you to change your life and blah, 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 blah. And we talked a bit about, well, Stanley wasn't there because of any of his choices. It just happened. It was a coincidence. Well, when you look at somebody like Hector, it's the same thing. Hector is definitely not a Camp Green Lake because of any of the choices he's made. He has been in a very unlucky life. He lived all by himself. Him and his mom. Then they lost their house. And then his mom left him in a park one day and never came back. We don't know why. We don't know what happened to her. Did she die? Was she arrested for something and taken away? So Hector has had a terrible life. That brings us back to Madame Zeroni, right? And it makes us wonder if way back when Madame Zeroni wasn't carried up to the top of the mountain to drink from the water that ran uphill, did something happen to her? Yes, she put a curse on Stanley's family, but it seems like her own family, the Zeroni family, has not had it easy as well. And another thing that's really interesting is I like that when Stanley sang the lullaby to Hector, that's a lullaby that only Stanley's family knows. Nobody else sings that lullaby. But Hector says, my mom used to sing me that lullaby. A little bit different, but it was the same one. Cool. All right, chapter 44. Stanley tried to sleep, not knowing when he'd get the chance again. He heard the showers and later the sounds of dinner. He heard the creaking of the rec room door. His fingers drummed against the side of the hole. He heard his own heartbeat. He took a drink from the canteen. He had given Zero the water jars. They each had a good supply of onions. He wasn't sure how long he remained in the hole. Maybe 5 hours. He was surprised when he heard Zero whispering for him to wake up. He didn't think he'd fallen asleep. If he had, he thought it must have just been for the last 5 minutes. Although, when he opened his eyes, he was surprised how dark it was. There was only one light on in the camp, in the office. The sky was cloudy, so there was very little starlight. Stanley could see a sliver of a moon, which appeared and disappeared among the clouds. He carefully led Zero to the hole, which was hard to find in the darkness. He stumbled over a small pile of dirt. I think this is it, he whispered. You think? Zero asked. It is, said Stanley, sounding more certain than he really was. He climbed down. Zero handed him the shovel. Stanley stuck the shovel into the dirt at the bottom of the hole and stepped on the back of the blade. He felt it sink beneath his weight. He scooped out some of the dirt and tossed it off to the side. Then he brought the shovel back down. Zero watched for a while. I'm going to try to refill the water jars, he said. Stanley took a deep breath and exhaled. Be careful, he said, then continued digging. It was so dark, he couldn't even see the end of his shovel. For all he knew, he could be digging up gold and diamonds instead of dirt. He brought each shovelful close to his face to try to see if anything was there before dumping it out of the hole. As he made the hole deeper, it became harder to lift the dirt up and out. It was 5 feet deep before he even started. He decided to use his efforts to make it wider instead. This made more sense, he told himself. If Kate Barlow had buried a treasure chest, she probably wouldn't have been able to dig much deeper. So why should he? Of course, Kate Barlow probably had a whole gang of thieves helping her. You want some breakfast? Stanley jumped at the sound of Zero's voice. He hadn't heard him approach. Zero handed down a box of cereal. Stanley carefully poured some cereal into his mouth. He didn't want to put his dirty hands inside the box. He nearly gagged on the ultra-sweet taste. They were sugar-frosted flakes, and after eating nothing but onions for more than a week, he had trouble adjusting to the flavor. He washed them down with a swig of water. Zero took over the digging. Stanley sifted his fingers through the fresh piles of dirt, in case he had missed anything. He wished he had a flashlight. A diamond no bigger than a pebble would be worth thousands of dollars, yet there was no way he'd see it. They finished the water that Zero had gotten from the spigot by the showers. Zero said he'd go fill the jars again, Stanley said he'd go fill the jars again, but Zero insisted that he do it instead. No offense, but you make too much noise when you walk. You're too big. Stanley returned to the hole. As the hole grew wider, parts of the surface kept caving in. They were running out of room. To make it much wider, they would first have to move some of the surrounding dirt piles out of the way. He wondered how much time they had before the camp woke up. "How's it going?" Zero asked when he returned with the water. Stanley shrugged one shoulder. He brought the shovel down the side of the hole, shaving off a slice of the dirt wall. As he did so, he felt the shovel bounce off something hard. "What was that?" Zero asked. Stanley didn't know. He moved his shovel up and down the side of the hole. As the dirt chipped and flaked away, the hard object became more pronounced. All right, guys, we're going to leave this chapter here for now. I would like you to make a prediction on what you think they're going to find. What is this hard object? And if you do believe it's Kate's treasure, what do you think is actually in there? What kind of treasure do you think Kiss and Kate Barlow would have buried? Okay, make your predictions. All right, see you in the next video.